Okay, in this video, we're going to talk about how to extract the American Community Survey, which is part of the census data. And we'll do so from the site called iPUMS. It's up in University of Minnesota. It's a wonderful site that really has a pretty robust set of data files that you can get beyond American Community Survey. It has current population survey, census from other countries, a lot of good GIS and health-related data housed there as well, including medical expenditure survey and the time use survey. Those are all very good data sources. Now here, if you go to iPUMS USA, this is where you can get American Community Survey, and because the topic that the data covers is very robust, it's really important that you customize the data in a way that's really specific. Otherwise, you're going to get really overwhelmingly robust set of data. Before you do download the data, you do have to register with the organization. It's free of charge, but do remember that you have to promise to use it for good and never for evil. Here, when you click on get data, this will allow you to do a number of things. And this is a really important step in terms of determining not just when, but what. So a few things to think about. The first is a sample. And obviously, here you can get all kinds of different data going all the way back to 1850. However, today I'm going to walk you through how to get most recent data, which is ACS 5 years. So you can get individual year data as well as a 3-year composite or 5-year composite. So if you have ACS 5 years, so it's basically combining 2016 through 19 would be the ACS 5-year data for 2019. So it's a rolling years. It makes the geographical units a little more specific. So it's the advantage there is that you can get down to a little smaller geography using 5-year data. Okay, so once you do that, one thing to remember is what we call unit of analysis, right? So you can either get the data at the household level and then at the person's level. So if you think about it, if you're getting a person's level data, but would like to have household information, what you have to remember is that if this sample has 3 people from the same household, that household information is repeated 3 times. That's something to remember. So I'll walk you through some of the highlights here. So geography, FIPS code is a federal designation for the state, county, and even city. And in fact, it can go all the way down to census tract. So for instance, Illinois is number 17 in the FIPS code. And then Cook County, FIPS code is 31. So 17031 is the FIPS code for Cook County, Illinois. So you can kind of, if you know geographically what you want, you can gather and add it onto your ACS data. And then it has other really helpful elements here. If you want to, for instance, add what is called metropolitan status, so density of where the person lives, you can add that. Similarly, you can get things like the city code. So if you click on the city code, it shows you what a city code looks like. And those are the again, the FIPS code that is designated for cities. So if you add the FIPS code plus the city, you can identify the city. Then if you go to things like economic characteristics, you can get household level information like mortgage status. So you can, whether someone has mortgage or not, whether some mortgage was paid off or not, size of homes, mortgage payment. I think the equivalent is a rent of, if they're not paying mortgage, there's a rent information. So these are all household level information. And then once you go over to person's level, the ones that we often get as sort of a basic information, person's level, are things like sex, age, and then they have sort of not just marital status, but you can also look at whether someone was married within a year, whether someone divorced within a year or became widowed within a year. So you can kind of look at that trend over time as well. The big one that I often look at is whether a woman delivered a child within the past 12 months. So that's how we look at fertility. So those are demographics. And then race and ethnicity. And this is the one that is somewhat complex. We do need to clean that up a little bit between race and Hispanic origin. So you can estimate things like non-Hispanic white, for instance. You would have to do a little bit of coding for that. And it has a place of birth. Place of birth is an interesting one in that you can get down to a state level where the person was born, but also other countries as well. So this is very often you can create a recode for immigrants, people who are born outside of the United States. You also have ancestry. I don't use this very often, but what's really helpful are for those immigrants, year in which they're naturalized, when they entered US. So the reason why they're different, obviously, between year of immigration versus year of entries, some people have entered United States as non-immigrants. So for instance, they could have been undocumented or they could have been students. There are many reasons why there are discrepancies, and it tries to capture as much as possible. And then health insurance. You can get sort of general information about whether someone has health insurance or not. And then you can even break it down to whether someone has a private health insurance, insurance through employer union, someone has Medicaid recipient versus and Medicare, VA. So you can disaggregate by different types of insurance as well. So this is very helpful. Education, you can get, if you are enrolled in school, you can determine that versus education attainment. That one is only for those that are over the age of 25. So at the age of 25, if you have a degree of 25 or older, the degree in which you obtained is captured here. You can also, for those that are in school, you can even capture whether someone's enrolled in public or private school, which is also helpful. And then work. There's employment status, whether someone's working or not. And then labor force status, whether someone is in a labor force or not. So if you click on the codes for employment status, it will make that distinction. So you have, instead of 2, you have 3 there, right? So you have employed, unemployed, or not in labor force. So it is to make sure that you have a, if you're calculating rates or percents, for instance, it makes a difference what the denominator is in that case. You will see that occupation has gone through periodic changes. The SOC code is what Bureau of Labor Statistics codes. And obviously, these will change over time because jobs change over time. So then that's the reason why, for instance, in 1950, I don't think you'll find a code for a web designer, for instance. So occupation codes are quite tricky to compare over time. And then industry. So they make the distinction. So you could be a doctor who's who's a clinician versus working in research at a university. So the industries are different, even if you have the same occupation. And that's why they make those distinctions. And then they capture amount of work they have done in recent times, and also has unemployment, although I don't think they capture those in ACS anymore. Yeah, it's not included in ACS 2019. Okay, income. Again, remember, this is person's data. So it just like we saw in health insurance, it captures total personal income, although it does have family income there. It also disaggregates types of income, right down to Social Security, public assistance, interest or retired income. So it has different types of income. And then poverty status. Now, the poverty status is a little more, it's rather complex. It's something that if you are interested in measuring poverty, I strongly encourage you to visit this poverty definition site, because it's not something that, it's not a binary of someone who's above or below poverty. It's a little more complex than that. So it's something that you need to read up on. Let's see. Migration is something that I occasionally look at. It has information. The ones that I am very often interested are whether someone moved within in past year or not. So you can even measure things like whether where they lived a year before, in terms 12 months ago, in terms of the county or different metropolitan area. So if these are of the same code as where they live now, that means that person had lived in the same place. Or you can kind of assume that if this flag of migration has changed, then you can look at where that person moved from. So this is pretty helpful. There are a few questions about disability here, not as many. These are kind of hard to capture in a general population survey, but it is there. Veteran status is there. And you can kind of disaggregate veteran status as well, like when they served, types of questions. Okay, so once you have those, one thing to remember about these is that, and I will kind of warn you, the national data, the number of variables can increase quite quickly, but once you have the national data for American Community Survey, the file sizes are very, very large. So very often that could become a problem. And then I'm just going to quickly show you the two ways in which you can sort of import into software. One is data and the other is R. So if you click on data, it will just give you the code that looks like this that will allow you to import. So you can simply copy and paste it onto Stata, and then you have the code that will read the CSV file. The only thing you would have to change here is the location of the file. So if you go near the top here, you need to make sure that this is where the file is located. Then it will attach variable names and all the values that are in here. So you don't really have to do any of these manually. They have Stata code that allows you to create Stata file. So they give you the code for that. R is slightly different. What you'll notice is that it's very simple. In fact, 2 lines of code here. But if you are using R, you also need this DDI file. You need to download this file, and you need to make sure that this file name stays the same. The reason for that is once you, in R, you also need this library, iPUMS R. Someone was nice enough to write this library where it allows you to read the file and code all those and turn it into R file. And again, just like Stata, all you have to do is kind of make sure that you have the right path for this DDI file, and then it will create the ACS file. So basically, that's how you get your iPUMS data and turn it into, at least in Stata and R, you have usable data files that will allow you to do some analyses.